Hello everyone, I hope by the end of this video you'll be an active subscriber. We've been discussing the possibilities regarding XRP. What will XRP be able to achieve in terms value in the coming months, and will XRP achieve the impossible? Will it be able to turn Ethereum? Could it be a threat to Bitcoin? Everybody has been discussing this for years, decades, and has tried to figure out what's likely to occur with XRP. What has been discussed this for years, decades, and has tried to figure out what's likely to occur with XRP. There's no way for anyone to be right about this, not even me. In fact, I'll be the first to admit that, as you know, I'm not sure what XRP will do this time around. I'm not sure what Bitcoin will be doing this time. We just take each day at a time and we base ourselves on what price data telling us. One thing I'll be able to say, and something that we can be sure of, is that XRP thus far has been able to defy every expectation, isn't it? If we look 1 year ago, we said that XRP would trade at $2.40 and Ethereum was selling at $2,000. Some would argue that you're insane, since XRP is so high in value when Ethereum is half its value when it was in March 2024 is a wild. XRP currently is around $100 billion away from a market capitalization from the flipping of Ethereum, which is just crazy for me, and lots of people would look at this and think, oh, it's not really a big deal. If we look back 1 year or even 2 years ago, or even all the way to 2021, what XRP does today, it's quite alarming, but the potential for it to do is worse, and it's something we need to think about it. We must address the issue. Let's begin with the major discussion currently taking place around cryptocurrency. Which is Bitcoin the answer? It's true that Larry Fink recently predicted Bitcoin and, well, said that Bitcoin could be worth $500,000 to $700,000 for each Bitcoin, which is sort of crazy. It's something I've said before. When we examine the things these major players are declaring about Bitcoin, they say the same things to keep everyone's attention on one thing so that you're distracted and focused on this. It's not one of the more recent price predictions for Bitcoin. Have you seen this prediction just recently, in which Bitwise the CIO has stated that Bitcoin will be worth $1 million in 2029? I bring these two topics up since I'm trying to discuss these two. I'd like to speak about the fact that I know the way these predictions seem on paper, such things as the price of XRP prediction of it ranging from $10, $20 to $30 or $30. Let's get into the video and listen to it. It goes back to Davos in January. If you're worried about the decline in your currency or are worried about the stability in the political or economic system of your nation, you could benefit from an international currency called Bitcoin, which will help you overcome these local anxieties. I am a huge fan of the use of this instrument for a means of. If that is the case, and you can see that it might be a good hedge against perhaps the possibility of hope securities or equity. But the question is, can you imagine the possibility of a 2%, 5% allocation? I was in an trust fund for sovereign wealth. In this week's meeting, that was the discussion. Should we be able to have a 2% allocation? Do we need a 5% allocation if everyone joined in the same discussion? It would have to be 500,000, 600 million, 700,000 for each Bitcoin. Also, does it appear that, I'm not advertising it, by the way, this isn't my marketing or promotion. Of course, he says this is not a prediction or promotion in his own statements, but as you can see, it's the concept that we're always watching Bitcoin. In the meantime, if we consider the things that XRP has accomplished within the last year compared to Bitcoin, I'm referring to the fact that it's clear that we shouldn't have in the spotlight of Bitcoin, as I've stated over the past 2, 3, or 4 years. Also, Bitwise is very adamant in its belief that Bitcoin will reach $1 million by 2029. My favorite way to assess the worth of Bitcoin on a long-term perspective is to consider its market size. After I believe that Bitcoin is on the path to redefining gold, it's a market worth $20 trillion. I'm sure it'll be used to facilitate international transactions and transporter transactions. This is another $1 trillion market. You can then divide that number by the value of Bitcoin and you'll be left with a goal amount. Bitwise, we believe it's likely to exceed $1 million in 2029. If you look at it from a longer time frame, you can take a look at demand and supply on the marketplace, right? One of the biggest complaints about Bitcoin is the price that's set by demand and supply. It's also a major advantage in a market such as today, where we're generating 160,000 Bitcoin every year, while ETFs buy the equivalent of 500,000. Right? Something must give. The thing that I am convinced of is resistance to price it eventually increases. I believe each pension fund should be devoted to Bitcoin. While I was a reporter, I reported on the way that a lot of these pension funds are underwater. It's sad, but I'm interested to know whether or not this is the case. Let's say that there's a pension fund that is interested in transferring the funds to Bitcoin. They'll need to talk to a consultant in order for the consultant to conduct due diligence regarding Bitcoin. It can take months and weeks, and if the expert tells you that no, you shouldn't put your money into it, they'll ignore it. Does that make sense? They are gatekeepers. They are, in general, the deep market for institutional investors is a market where there are tiers after tier after another because people want their job. If something happens to go wrong, they'd like somebody to blame and claim it was their responsibility. We've worked with a range of consultants for a large amount of time, and a lot of them have already allocated. It's the reason you're starting to see this market exploding to the point of. I'll also add an idea from an institutional standpoint, since I think that many ignore the fact that crypto is an estimated $3 trillion market in the present. If you've got 0% allotted to cryptocurrency, then you're short. When we speak of people allotting 1 or 2% to Bitcoin, this is just to reach neutral. Institutions are beginning to realize that when you recognize it as a piece of this pie, you must be able to at least a tiny amount or an active bet on it. They're not comfortable with this either. Therefore, I believe you're going to observe this 1%, 2% thing grow at the institution level in the next couple of years. The thing that is crazy about this is that it's a matter of considering the market from this angle. What would XRP be worth, since we know that tokenization and DeFi for institutions isn't occurring on Bitcoin? It's not going to happen. Okay, if Bitcoin is expected to grow to $1 million by 2029, isn't it more plausible to suggest that XRP could hit $100 or even $50 in 2029? I know it sounds absurd at the moment, however, it's the same with the $1 million BitWin in 2029. However, if we consider the amount that will be tokenized on the chain and what amount of money will be traded on the chain and these price forecasts of the future, then BitWin will go to $1 million because of this, or whatever. The main reason for Bitcoin to be able to go up to an exact amount are based on demand and supply. However, what is the actual utility that's institutional grade? That's why I've always believed that XRP is one of the underdogs that people aren't focusing on. I've said it before and also said it back in September that BlackRock and other major institutions continue advertising on the Bitcoin as well as Ethereum hype machine into the retail industry. They're using this in order to deflect from the real value of Bitcoin and Ethereum and divert attention from the true value in this sector, and I believe it even to the present day. I've even mentioned that you have been told numerous times that the main priority is on tokenization. Do you really believe that the world can be tokenized by Ethereum? I'm not even trying to talk about Bitcoin in this article because, let's admit it, it has not been able to be a viable platform for use in financial transactions. When we consider this, let's consider which networks can be used in a large-scale manner for applications that are financial grade, and in 2029 all institutions will be in place. Tokenization could be billions. However, it won't have a place for Bitcoin and Ethereum. What does this mean? XRP is worth, it's bound to represent trillions in dollars in my view.